So for this review, I have one more kerosene fragrance. I've reviewed a couple others. Specifically, the last one I did was Follow. This one is Followed, and it's very similar in terms of its notes because it's a coffee sort of fragrance, as was Follow. So I'm curious, because this one shares a lot of the same notes as the other kerosene fragrance, what makes it more unique this time? So this is also, like the other ones, a unisex sort of gourmand type of fragrance. So I'm gonna put some on. I've heard it's relatively strong, so let's see what the deal is. So the opening is very similar to Follow, and again, they share a lot of the same notes. There's the coffee note and everything, and there's some sweet notes thrown in there. The main difference here is that this one has a chocolate note in addition to the coffee notes and things like that. It also has two different vanilla notes, so it is a very strong coffee opening though. I would actually say it's even stronger for the coffee opening than Follow. And I thought Follow already had a pretty strong and pretty realistic coffee smell. This is even more intense, which is actually pretty surprising. So the main notes here, there's only a few. There's coffee, caramel, chocolate, vanilla, Madagascar vanilla, and then amber. Another difference is that this doesn't have the benzoin as Follow had. So when I smell this, the opening, I would actually say, besides the coffee alone, it has a sort of dessert quality. Like, it smells very similar to tiramisu, which is a coffee-laced, fluffy, creamy dessert. Which kind of makes sense because, there's these dessert-esque notes in here with the caramel and the vanilla and things like that. In terms of the coffee, it's very, very similar to the other kerosene fragrance, but like I said before, it's stronger and it's sweeter, because even though Kerosene Follow had like a vanilla note, I believe it also had a caramel note, it was not as sweet as this one is, so it gives it a little bit of an extra layer of difference there. And I think the amber is relatively strong in this fragrance, or it could be the chocolate, but there's definitely a very earthy, thick, heavy kind of tone here. Maybe it is the chocolate. You don't come across chocolate notes too often in fragrances. There's Mancera, like roses and chocolate, that sort of thing. But this, because I usually don't care for chocolate in fragrances that much, I just don't like that smell. Usually it's not too realistic of a chocolate scent. This is actually pretty good. I wouldn't say it smells just like real chocolate, because you could still kind of smell it's not quite like that. But blending it with the kind of robust tone of the coffee and then the Madagascar vanilla for a little bit of sweet warmth, it definitely does work better here. And even though this is a generally sweet type of fragrance, it's not super ridiculously sweet, which I appreciate, because sometimes if you go too sweet on a fragrance, it just gets a little bit too cloying and too kind of obnoxious. Especially as a unisex scent, which this is. It is definitely, with its sweetness, leaning more on the feminine side of things. However, I will still say it has a certain earthiness and certain toastiness that is still good for men to wear as well. So I like the contrast of the amber with the vanilla and with the coffee. Like, they're pretty well layered. They all have their own kind of moment to shine here in this fragrance. Now, I know there's two vanilla notes. There's just the vanilla and then the Madagascar vanilla. I don't really know. I mean, there's not that much of a difference there. And overall, the strength of the vanilla note here is not that powerful. It's definitely not in the body of the fragrance. It's more a background note. So you're not going to get a really thick, sweet vanilla out of this. Now, the coffee so far holds up just through and through. It's not one of those notes where, you know, you get it in the opening and that really fades off. It's really, really potent. It is the strongest note here out of the entire fragrance, which is nice because it really does smell like, you know, you got the coffee maker going. You got the coffee brewing in the morning. It has that really authentic, real coffee scent, which is very nice. And then, you know, mixed with some of those sweeter notes like the caramel and the vanilla and things like that. So in terms of its strength overall, its longevity, its projection, it is actually really strong. Out of the 3 kerosene fragrances I've tried so far, this is the strongest, for sure. And I would also say it's probably one of the most well-balanced. Even though it is very, very similar to Follow, I like that it's slightly more potent and has just kind of a different nature to it, even though it is still a coffee fragrance. Now, longevity, like I said, it's very strong. I would say it's probably a 7 to 8 hour fragrance. It's really more intense than you would expect. And in terms of projection, also in the same vein, it has a presence to it. This is definitely if you put on a little bit too much, it's definitely gonna just stuff the room with this coffee smell, which isn't a bad thing. But you know, with these types of really strong fragrances, it's always best to err on the side of caution and use a little bit less than what you think you might need. But in general, this is actually a really nice coffee scented fragrance. In terms, you know, if you like coffee, then you're gonna like Followed and Follow because they both have that prominent coffee note. But if you really want a strong coffee scent, then just go for Followed because it's definitely stronger, especially with the coffee note. Now, besides the coffee, I would say the main thing here is that the coffee note is so strong that it kind of overshadows some of the other notes here, besides maybe the chocolate. But like I said before, like the vanilla note, the amber note, they're there, but they're in the background and they're pretty faint because this coffee note is really just like bearing down on the whole thing. So I guess that would make this very much a pure coffee scent, because this is pretty much as pure coffee as you can go without just making yourself a cup of coffee. So again, if you like the scent of coffee, you want to smell like coffee, this is probably the best option you could possibly go for. And it also has a little bit of sweetness to balance out that kind of robust toastiness of the coffee note itself. But overall, I think this is actually a really nice, attractive sort of scent, especially because it's unique, because there's not that many coffee scents out there, especially good coffee scents. So this does what, you know, most fragrances do not do. So that is pretty much my review of Kerosene Followed. If you found this video helpful, of course you can leave a like, maybe subscribe, and I make videos throughout the week, so stick around for those.